I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice.
No.
I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political.
I'm not playing this entire thing because I will not be able to get through the 5 minutes. It's on my Twitter feed. I'll talk about it afterwards. We have limited time with our initial guest, Breanna Morello, but I wanted to highlight something here.
I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram.
For those that presumes the roots exist, which they never did on Facebook or Instagram. But hold on, here, this.
I started building social media to give people a voice.
He built Facebook so that, from what I understand, horny frat students could rate the sexual appeal of other women unbeknownst to them. Oh, you know, you wanted to give people a voice, all right. You wanted to give people a voice to humiliate and shame other women online. My goodness. Okay, forget it. I'll get into that afterwards because we've got a guest and we're going to get into two big stories that she's covering. Breanna Morello, who many of you might know because I thought that she was the journalist who went through the. I'm doing, Brianna, I'm going to bring you in. I'm doing it as a joke. I have not only have. Oh goodness, Brianna, you look like the journalist who was in that video to begin with. But I clarified, and my goodness, I'm having a debate online as to whether or not an apology is required when you make a mistake of fact that is not accusatory. But bottom line, I apologize to you privately. You are not the journalist in that video, but that's how this all came to be. So what a fortuitous mistake it was. Breanna, for those who don't know who you are, we will not delve into childhood, but just who are you, how'd you get here? And we're going to talk about the stories.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I've worked in the corporate media world for over 10 years, Fox News, Newsmax, local news, ESPN, Major League Baseball as a journalist. And then I ventured off to the independent world when Fox tried to get me to take the jab and I said no. And so now we've started this independent platform. And like you showed in the video, as an independent journalist, I would have known a little bit better than to just walk in. I probably would have called an attorney and asked for a lawyer's permission before doing so, considering all of the stakes that are so high. But yeah, it's been great since, because independent journalism is going to save this country, and I truly believe in that, and that's what we're doing right now.
I don't want to get into it for too long, but you were at Fox News. You had a bunch of big names. How many years were you there for?
Fox was 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. And with the environment, I won't even ask it because I don't want you to speak ill of former employers. Sure. You're independent now because you were forced out for very personal decisions, and I don't know. You don't look like you harbor much resentment. Do you harbor resentment about it, or was it all for the better?
Yeah, I think it worked out all for the better. In the time that it was all going down, I was a little upset with Fox. So I was working remotely. I had worked for them for 2 years. So I'd worked for them in the office in New York City for about a year. Then I had moved to Florida and worked somewhere else, then came back to Fox remotely. And then they wanted me to come back into the office and work in the office. But what they left out was the simple fact that if I were to come back to the office, they would require me to comply with the New York City private sector vaccine mandate, which meant that I had to either be vaccinated or I was going to get put on unpaid leave. So I got an email forwarded to me, and it's insane to think that this even happened, forwarded to me the day that I took off from work to unpack my things and to let movers into my new apartment in New York City. And sadly, that didn't work out because they literally that afternoon forwarded me an email saying that I was going to get put on unpaid leave if I didn't get the jab. So initially it was tough because Fox was one of the executives was trying to tell me I could be on air and I should just take it and or just file for an exemption. I just decided that I wasn't going to comply in any capacity at all. And so I just decided to leave. So at the time it was very upsetting because I didn't have a job lined up, but it worked out in the end because now I got to cover the stories that I think are really important.
Well, I can tell you right now, I just heard all of my audience fall in love with you if they didn't know you before that, but it's fantastic. And not everybody had the, I say courage or ability to do that. And not everybody made the same decision. All right. Well, yeah. So we got to meet each other because of the New Orleans terror incident. And that journalist, and I like I said in the video, like I wasn't even angry at the journalist. I just would never have done it in a million years. So you've got some good contacts in as relates to this story. Without getting into sources and methods, what's the latest and who are you talking to that's telling you what's going on the ground in New Orleans?
Yeah, well, sadly, the FBI isn't trying to be transparent. They're usually the ones who dodge me quite often. There was multiple outlets that went in and did a whole tour of the facility, or the home, I should say. And ultimately, they said that on Thursday, they cleared the home. So the day after the terror attack, they cleared it after they went through it and they released it back to the property owner. The property owner let the journalist into the home to look around, which is very strange because I talked to FBI agents, former federal prosecutors. They all say that it takes days to go through a home, especially after a terror attack. And so a lot of them were very concerned that the FBI didn't do the job that it needed to do to sift through everything. And then you look at the footage and you go through it, and the New York Post journalist shows you that there's a desk with electronics, she says, and one of the items that's visible on the desk appears to be a laptop. Now, other FBI agents tell me too, that looks like a laptop. I know there's a lot of people who think it might be a cooling pad, but it looks like a laptop. So I've asked the FBI now 3 times why they didn't take that laptop with them as evidence. I also asked them, because as she goes through the property, she shows you that there's a Quran left behind, there's Islamic material left behind, as well as a Bible. So I asked why they didn't take all of that as well, because we obviously know that religion was a motive behind this. And they didn't respond. And then you look at the countertop. There's the warrant, which says it's sealed, and there's a copy left behind, which they're supposed to be doing. And then there's also the receipt of the items they took from the home, the FBI. But when I talk to FBI agents who have done several warrants on homes, they say that those notes in regards to the receipt are usually handwritten because the agents are on the scene and they're writing what they've actually taken from the home and give a carbon copy to the property owner so that they have it for their records. But the odd part in it is that receipt is actually typed up. It's not handwritten. And they thought that was pretty strange because who would have a computer on hand and who would have a printer on hand? It's not something that normally is done by the FBI. So, and that's right there on the counter.
Yeah. And first of all, everybody, you're going to tell me that it doesn't look like Brianna in this. Okay, it doesn't matter.
I would never wear yoga pants on a crime scene or any reporter.
Yeah, maybe that was the implicit insult. I have nothing for or against yoga pants. It's not just that it's there like the orgy of evidence out of Minority Report. You can actually read what I presume contains some confidential information. You're like, it's going to have the property address. I presume. I'm almost scared to look.
Yeah.
Look at this sample of. I mean. Okay, you've been doing this for longer than I have, and you have contacts within. There's nothing normal about this. This is absolutely abnormal.
Yeah. My FBI contacts say there's nothing normal about this. Federal prosecutors also saying the same thing. And they were very confused. Actually, one of them thought it was fake. He didn't think this was a real tour. And I said, no, I mean, they're confirming that she got a real tour of it. And it wasn't by the FBI, it was the property. Yeah.
This is the address of the property in what that journalist posted. This is why, it's like being let into the Capitol building and you think you're okay. And then they're going to come and say, what did you publish to the internet? Okay, I mean, and the walk, there's nothing that's been bagged, tagged. When we say like, oh, there's just a valise sitting here. This is the Quran open up to a page. And he's got the, I guess, cause he maybe was not born speaking Arabic. He's got the English alliterations. It's this. Okay, so the cooling pad for the computer was at the beginning, correct? Right here. Okay.
Beginning. Yep. So it's right there. So if you could zoom in a little bit, it does look like a laptop. I think it looks like a laptop.
Absolutely. They got the logo there. I mean, I'd say it almost looks like a Lenovo, but
yeah.
There's no question.
She says electronics too, by the way. I know there's a lot of people on X saying that it's not a laptop, but she says these are the electronics they left behind when she's giving you the tour.
It is. I can't zoom in on the video, but holy cows. So you have contacts. How does it work actually? If I could ask, with your contacts within the FBI, they have field offices and then they have their federal overarching entity. Like how does it work in terms of who you get to talk to and who they answer to?
Yeah, so for an investigation like this, I contact the field office directly. They do have a media line for journalists to reach out and ask questions, and so that's where I go with these questions. So that's kind of where you go. You don't ask New Orleans. This happened in Houston, so I'd ask the Houston field office for these details, and that's the one who gave me these responses. And the strange part about all of this, just the following day. So keep in mind, terrorist attack happened last Wednesday. The FBI cleared the home Thursday morning. By the way, that New York Post reporter reported to the home before the FBI did. So she claims in her tweets that she got there at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, I believe. So she beat the FBI to his home, which is very strange as well. So The FBI looked at the home, I guess, from Wednesday after 1 p.m. Eastern time, cleared it by Thursday morning, back to the homeowner, the property owner received their property back. So they were able to gain access to the property. And then there's a local news reporter who went back on Friday. And according to this local news reporter, it's a Fox local affiliate in Houston, they claim that the Harris County, so that's the county office, the deputies, that they sealed off the property to find more explosive device evidence is what they're reporting. So I reached out specifically to the sheriff's office because I do know him, not personally, but I've known him for quite some time now on X and stuff. And I did ask him, I was like, hey, what's going on here? Are you guys actually going through the house now to find evidence? And he said he can't give me comments, but the investigation is being led by the FBI. So I sent that to my FBI friends again. They tell me, Brianna, that just means that they're lending their resources temporarily to the FBI to help them out because they probably just need some, men out there to help them. They might not have all the agents that they need, so they're sealing off the property, and the FBI might actually be coming back to collect more evidence. So I think, and I asked the FBI if they went back to go collect evidence after I complained to them about leaving all these items behind, and they don't want to comment on it. They told me to go back to their website. What their website actually says page error. So if you go to their website for press releases, it's not there. And then the FBI told me they're aware that it's not there. They're working on it.
And we were DMing, and I had asked you, did any one of your contacts at the FBI, if you had asked them, did they answer whether or not that entire crime scene technically is basically spoiled now? Is it a contaminated crime scene?
No, they didn't say any of that. And that's the thing too, is I think that they're just, they continue to push that this is a single person who was acting that day. Now, that wasn't the original narrative they told us. I'm sure you remember. They originally told us that multiple people.
Yeah, but I felt like I was going crazy. They said it's not a terror attack, although they had the ISIS flag there. Maybe they thought that was a gag. Then they said he didn't act alone. There were accomplices planting IEDs throughout New Orleans. They've got the video footage. I then tweeted out, how long did you have that video footage for when you said that he acted alone? It was highlighting some contradictions. Then they come out and say, no, it was a terrorist attack, and no, he was acting alone. Although you've seen his travel plans. He went to Egypt, went up to Canada, Ontario, which for good or bad has a very high population of immigrant population. And it's very questionable, if not outright obvious, that he was not acting alone. And the only question is, they typically say we do not comment on the existence or whatever of an investigation. And yet here they're offering a bunch of information early on that turns out to be 180 degrees inverted from reality. I mean, I don't have any experience with this. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think they're intentionally trying to cause confusion. And the key part about where he traveled to Egypt is right by Libya. And Libya has a extended history of training terrorists. And we're very well versed on that. So it could be that our federal government missed this, that he might have traveled to Libya after arriving in Egypt. I know a lot of the CIA experts on X have been floating that idea as well. So that's a possibility that he could have been trained when he did that trip to Egypt. So it's interesting to see that our FBI missed all of this. Now, like you cited, so the mayor of New Orleans came out and said that this was a terror incident. And then we saw that the FBI agent nose piercing came out and said that this was not a terror event.
Is her name actually nose piercing, or did she have a nose piercing?
She had a nose piercing, so it's a great joke because she really was not prepared. It's like a child.
Well, people were making the DEI joke yet again.
Yeah.
I didn't see the nose piercing. I just knew that she said it wasn't a terrorist attack when, by all accounts, it was patently so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the FBI had to issue a correction because she said that there wasn't any terror connection to any of this. And the FBI is like, nah, well, maybe like 30 minutes later, yeah, there was. I mean, she knew that there was an ISIS flag in that vehicle. I don't know whether it was the one that we thought was hanging on the car originally because it looked like maybe there was a coat thrown over it. I'm not sure if it was in the car specifically. But again, I mean, how do you miss that and then look at all of these cameras and say that this wasn't a terror event? You can't say something like that. You have to say, listen, we're investigating all avenues right now and we're not prepared to give comments. That's how you say it.
Time frame wise, do we know when they discovered his property in Texas? Because I initially read about that in the New York Post. But like if they had accessed that property at that point and then still made the statement it wasn't a terrorist attack, knowing what was in that guy's apartment, which at least would cause you to suspend and not answer the question. I wonder what they knew when and who knew what when. But if it's just a bunch of incompetent buffoons saying whatever, totally disjointed from one another, that's also a problem. So the fact that they're wrong is a problem. Why are they wrong could be an even bigger problem.
Yeah, I think they're trying to create chaos. I think they're trying to create confusion amongst the American people. We see time and time again that they do this, where they put out false information and they quickly fix it. Oh, sorry, we got it wrong. I think it's also meant to discredit social media platforms for those
Mhm.
who are on X, who are posting on X, independent journalists, because we're out here reporting things. And then if we're reporting what they're telling us, we look like we're factually incorrect. And a lot of people then might not trust us. But like you cited initially, too, they said that there was multiple people who were arrested in regards to all of this, and then they backpedaled that and said, "Ah, these were just innocent bystanders. They weren't individuals who participated in any of this." So I think it's all intentional, because this would be something that you'd hold close to your chest. You wouldn't release any of this to the public. And then also, you asked the question in regards to when did they find out about his Houston home? As soon as it took him about an hour to confirm his full name.
Yeah.
I got his information about it maybe an hour prior to all of this, and I was doing the digging, immediately got all of his information, the multiple homes that he had in Texas. He also had a residency in Georgia. He's also registered in several states to vote, but he switched it over time. It wasn't all at the same time. He was a registered Democrat back in 2012. He voted in the 2012 election. Like, I got all of this information through a database that I use. There's no way they didn't know about the Houston home and couldn't have sent their agents to his home sooner than 1 p.m. That day, because the terror attack took place at 3 a.m. I mean, they had that's over 9 hours. That's insane.
There's another element of the timeline I want to get into, but okay, so the New York Post reported that he was living in a trailer park among primarily Pakistani immigrants, many of whom didn't speak English. Apparently, the property that that journalist walked through, was that on the trailer park side, or was that another property?
I'm not sure. I know it's a rental, but I'm not 100% certain
Okay.
if it was the trailer that she was referring to. I know there was other reports that there was other independent journalists at his property, and so there was things like goats walking around and sheep walking around the property. So it was very strange.
So I heard as well. All right, and then the fire at the Airbnb in New Orleans. Do you have info on that? Because A, I don't know if it happened anymore. B, if it happened, I don't know when it happened, because they reported that the fire broke out 2 hours after he had already been killed by police. And so, I mean, like, again, it's chaos.
Yeah.
I have an underlying feeling it's also so that in a certain period of time, they can go back to everybody who repeated what the FBI said that was false and say, don't trust them anymore. They're disinformation, like Elon Musk, like other journalists. But do you know the timeline on that fire, or whether or not it even occurred?
Yeah, that's the problem here, right? I heard that he tried starting the fire himself, but like you said, he was already deceased at the time where we heard the reports of the fire taking place. So I don't know. And it's funny how it just quickly has dissipated. Like, no one's even talking about, there's no real reports on it either. I just don't understand why these things happen. Why we hear, well, I know why they happen, but why they tell you a little bit and then it kind of just disappears and vanishes, and no one is even asking any questions. And also, by the way, the FBI, when I ask questions to them now, they tell me they're not doing any interviews with the media and that I can't even ask them questions anymore. So
Well,
they're done with me.
Because you're not a trustworthy journalist, like the woman who did the walkthrough. Who I was wondering. What the whole thing is, I read your bio and then I look at the hat. It's like, why? I guess you're wearing. I don't know if you were wearing. When I thought it was you, I was like, oh, I guess she's wearing a New York Post hat to like get access to.
Yeah.
I couldn't reconcile the New York Post hat, but I guess that journalist works for New York Post.
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as what we know now, the latest and where you're at, the individual, as far as we know now, worked alone, or at least their FBI is not saying that he didn't. He traveled to Egypt. We don't know if he hit Libya. We know that he either came through Canada, Ontario, which would explain a few things as well. And that's where it's at right now. No more latest breaking news.
Yeah, there's really nothing else. I mean, normally the FBI says things like, oh, this person was on our radar, but they haven't admitted to that, which makes me concerned, because given the fact there was an ISIS flag, whether it was homemade or whether it was something that was purchased or sent online or sent back from one of these trips he was on, how does one obtain an ISIS flag and it go unnoticed by the FBI? You know, the FBI probably knows our discussions, you and I, even before we started this broadcast, because they're in our phones at this point, but they didn't, for some reason, know anything about this individual. I mean, you don't become radicalized overnight, especially when you're a U.S. citizen. So it doesn't make any sense to me why this person wasn't on their radar, or maybe he was and they just don't want to tell us.
Well,
I think that's the big story.
Look, this is pure conjecture, but it's the only thing that can possibly explain what I believe was spoliation of the crime scene. He was known, and the connection is probably closer than will ever be known for certain, because the crime scene has now been spoiled, and so any allegation will always be tainted by that potential walkthrough, or at least, you know, the allegation that crime scene was tainted. Now, we don't know if he worked alone, because we don't know what was brought in there. I think there's heavy involvement, heavy knowledge, and that is why there was an overt attempt to destroy that crime scene.
Yeah.
Are you following the? I mean, everyone's asking for updates in the other big one of the day, which was the Las Vegas. How intimately familiar with that one are you?
Yeah, I've been trying to follow it. I listened to the Sean Ryan discussion that took place, and I've also listened to his space as well that he did just the other day. It's hard to gauge. This sounds like an individual who was really struggling with PTSD. And given the fact that he's sending emails and he's not really sending any evidence to back up his claims, I'm concerned that maybe it was just something that he wanted the public to be iffy about, or he wanted to be known before his passing. It's just so hard to gauge. I watched the footage. I know everyone thinks that it's clear as day, the footage that CNN released, the security footage. I don't see it. I don't see the actions of him sadly taking his life by shooting himself in the head. And then I just see the flames obviously going off in the car or whatever it could be. It's so questionable that it's really hard for me to gauge. And I just keep telling people, yes, I understand why we're all skeptical at this point. But this could have just been a man who was really dealing with a lot of PTSD. We know he went to Afghanistan, and I can't imagine what kind of pain he went through having to fight those wars for our country. So I just can't imagine. I really don't know what to think of it. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah, well, that one is another one where it's weird that they give more thorough pressers. They give the thorough press conferences on the ones that, not that they're less important, but not they didn't give a presser like that on the New Orleans terror attack. They certainly never gave a presser like that on the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting. But that one, they go into massive detail. They knew the timeline beginning to end, all of his pit stops, whatever. Maybe it was easier to track because of the Tesla truck. Yeah. Okay, but the other story that you are covering, and this is one where I've also got my questions, is the horrendous attack in the New York subway station of the, I always get mixed up and I don't want anyone accusing me of anything. Guatemalan illegal immigrant, correct? He was from Guatemala, allegedly, the suspect?
Yes, allegedly. Okay. He snuck into the country he was deported in 2018. Then he somehow got into our country, which is also concerning because DHS didn't know he was in our country. And that's really, really horrifying. The fact that, again, we're talking about people who got into our country that our own federal government has no idea about. But I reported that this individual the illegal alien was receiving welfare benefits from the state. So he was receiving social services from New York State. And he was at a house, which appears to be kind of like a wellness house because he might have been struggling with addiction issues. But according to the prosecutors who were yesterday in court, they detailed that he was so drunk that he doesn't even remember setting this woman on fire. And the Daily Mail just posted an image of the woman back in her high school years. They found her yearbook photo. So it's heartbreaking. It's also really sad because it's a yearbook photo. So I'm really heartbroken if there's any issues with her, whether or not she has family, because I tried calling and asking if there was any missing missing person report was how it'd be, and nobody would be able to confirm that for me. But unfortunately, it looks like the suspect, the case is going to stay in Brooklyn. They've charged him with first-degree murder, which if found guilty, he does face life without parole, but it's Brooklyn, so it's a liberal prosecutor. So I'm hoping that they don't try to drop the charges on him, but they have it all in film. I mean, according to them, he fanned the flames to make sure that she was going to burn to death. And it's horrifying to think about that, but that's what they have him on videos doing, that they say.
Well, that was a question I had. Firstly, so he had a criminal history above and beyond entering a country illegally and being deported. Do you know what his criminal history was?
I don't. I'm not familiar with it. I just know that he was deported in 2018.
And I didn't hear that his defense or his statement is that he was blackout drunk, automaton level drunk.
Yeah, so they claim that during the incident he was too drunk to remember. That's what police are claiming.
Holy hell. Okay. And then the other question that I had was the footage that we saw was from the outside, or at least the one that went viral. It's such a terrible word, but the video that was circulated the day of was from outside the metro car, the subway car. Is there footage? Do we know if there's footage from inside that shows the act itself?
I saw some images. I don't know where it came from, though. It kind of looked like it was cell phone footage, but I couldn't confirm like who took it or how it even landed online. And there was also these videos that were being posted of the suspect potentially doing a live stream prior to the incident as well. And he did look and sound like he was drunk. So I don't know when that was taken, but
the suspect having done a live stream on the internet.
So it might have been like a Facebook. He doesn't show the image of him setting this woman on fire or anything of that, but he is mumbling and talking about how he just wants to be left alone, and it just mumbles. He's not really clear. It's very obvious that he is drunk.
Okay. And the victim name has been released. Has her name been released?
Yeah, so they released it. Debrin Kawam. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. She's 57 years old from New Jersey. They've also released.
Oh, here I got your tweet. Let me bring it up here.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's just very sad. It's just very, very sad. Oh, I don't know why this. Sorry, we accidentally put a picture of Guantanamo Bay in that. It's not supposed to be the case. It's supposed to be court filings. Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. That's her yearbook photo, according to Daily Mail.
Because it was, again, not pure speculation, but you have to figure that someone's sleeping on a metro car. My question was whether or not she had faculties impaired because of the way she was not moving and leaning against the pole. Her name is Breanna Kawam. Did she had mobility issues from what I was from what I think you explained, or do we know if she had mobility issues?
Yeah, the NYPD told me at the time that there was a walker with her. So that's why when people were falsely reporting this woman's age, who they thought was the victim, this woman's age, and posting an AI image of a woman, I was the first one to fact check it, because the NYPD told me originally that they believed that there was a walker present. And I've never seen someone in their 20s with a walker. So I thought that was concerning. So then I reached out to the NYPD. This was like maybe 2 days after the incident, and asked them if they were able to ID the victim, and they did not even know her ID. So there was no way that report was even true, which is unfortunate, because a lot of people like to circulate fake information when it's really easy just to vet it. I mean, NYPD confirmed it within 44 seconds with me on the phone that it was false information.
Yeah, and I said, I hypothesized that she might have been homeless or sleeping on a subway car. You can come to your own conclusions, and then people say, "No, Viva, she's a PhD student." And I think, okay, where's any information to confirm that?
Yeah.
Which there wasn't, because it wasn't true. The only question is whether or not she was homeless at the time, or had been reported missing, or sleeping on a subway car.
Yeah.
So that, man, okay, and well, that's it's terrible. It's just gross. It's gross news. What else? I mean, so you're a daily independent journalist.
Yeah.
What stories are you working on now above and beyond these?
Yeah, so I'm really focused on, I've been good friends with Tommy Robinson, for an example, and obviously Tommy Robinson's sitting in prison right now in the UK, and he's been very truthful, very factually correct when it comes to the crisis that's been going on for the last few years. Not even the last few years. I mean, it's been over a decade now, and the UK has an issue with young children who are being raped by those they've brought in to the country, which are heavily Pakistani, or just, you could just say Muslim men who have come into their country. And it's been going on for a long time, but the real crisis here, and I don't know if a lot of Americans are aware of this, is the government's been covering for a lot of these individuals, because they don't want stereotypes to circulate about these migrants who have been coming into their country, because they've allowed millions of them to do so. So Tommy Robinson, whose own cousin was sexually assaulted by one of these individuals, that's why he's so passionate about it, has been making documentaries and going out there and reporting on this for years now. And he's wrongfully earned titles that I don't think he is. And they've gone after him, but now he's sitting in prison. And so I've been communicating with Tommy, like I do with a lot of the J6ers, emailing them and following up with them, because I do believe that we should talk to political prisoners if we can and get their side of all of this. So I've been communicating with Tommy. He's thrilled that Elon Musk is now talking about all these stories. He's thrilled for the victims. But he's going to probably be in prison until July, but he's being tortured in prison. He's in solitary confinement. He doesn't see anyone near him. He maybe sees a guard once a day. The jail itself, the 17 cells, he tells me, 16 of them are empty. So he's literally just alone for the entire day, which has a lot of psychological, I guess I would just say, effects when you're alone for that long by yourself.
It's torture. There is no, you can pull out fingernails. There's no greater form of torture than solitary confinement for a human, or for any higher order animal.
Yeah.
And their argument is, I've had Tommy on. I mean, I had Tommy on shortly before he went to jail. I've had him on a number of times. I've been following him since like 2018, since I heard that he was convicted, sentenced to 13 months within 5 hours of being arrested for alleged, filming the gangs as they entered the court. I can't believe this is going on in England in 2018. It's only gotten worse. He's in solitary. The explanation is for his own protection, right? Because he's in a prison that has a statistical overrepresentation of the very people or demographic that he's been railing against for the last decade. And so they stick him in there for his own protection.
Yeah, and he did an interview. This was a couple years back on Tucker Carlson's show where he detailed one of his other, I guess, times he had to go to prison. And the Muslim population did assault him several times. They'd walk past his cell, spit on him, throw other things on him that are vile, and they would attack him. So I understand why they have to keep him separate from all of them. I mean, if you really authentically care for his well-being, then yes, you would keep him separate. But again, he shouldn't even be in prison at all. This is something that they're saying is just contempt. And so they sentenced him to 18 months. But, you know, when Tommy was not in the country, when I knew that they were going to lock him up as soon as he crossed over back into the UK, I told him not to go back. I said, we should find you a country where you could seek political asylum. I think President Trump's going to win in November. I don't think you should go back. And he said, I'm not going to fight these people. Like, I'm not going to fight these people and make them, like, allow them to win. I'm going to stick up for my country and go back. I'm not afraid of them, Brianna. And so he went back. And I think that's amazingly brave. I don't know if I would have done the same, given the fact that I think they're going to try to hold him even longer. I mean, they're trying to call him a terrorist, even though he's never committed a terrorist act ever in his life, and he loves his country.
No, he explained it. It was the documentary Silence, which detailed how the media covered up for the misinformation, false story about the Syrian boy who was not the victim of waterboarding from a racist white kid. How they lied about everything as relates to that kid. How it highlighted failed immigration policy and was just one more example of it. And 18 months for contempt because he republished the lies, which were actually not lies as far as any evidence goes, about the Syrian boy. And he aired that documentary and put it on blast. It was in Trafalgar Square? I mean, it was in a big
I know it was at a big
area.
venue. Yeah, I don't remember where directly it was, but there was over 100,000 people. I think he told me that were present.
When you only correspond by email with Tommy, like he doesn't have access to a phone at any point in time?
He might have access to a phone. I don't know. I know that I communicate with him through email since we're, across the pond, so it's a little bit easier to do so. I can even give you his contact privately as well if you'd like to reach out to him, because I think it's really interesting.
I get in touch with this team via DM on numbers and social media. It's just that it's when I get Jake Lang, who's in prison up in DC, I don't know how he does it, and I don't want to ask too many questions, but it lands him in solitary every now and again. He does video from.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
The last time he had a big it was a cutout. It was just his face through everything else was whited out, so it looked a little weird. But so you're working on Tommy Robinson, or at least following the Tommy Robinson saga. That's going to be on hold until he's out of jail. But Elon is putting the pressure on all of the UK system. What was I? Oh, I was going to say one thing about Tommy Robinson, the gangs. It'll come back to me in a second.
We also did the Enrique Tarrio story yesterday. If you remember that.
On. Well, I remember the story that you were covering it for the January. Oh, okay, please. Yeah. Enrique Tarrio, everybody knows, 22 years for a seditious conspiracy. What was the story you reported on yesterday?
Yeah, so Tarrio told me, this was when he was in the DC jail, that he was approached by the DOJ who wanted him to lie and say that he orchestrated January 6th with President Trump via third-party person. So there was a mystery person who was in between them communicating back and forth. And so the DOJ wanted Tarrio to blame Trump on orchestrating it with him. And when Tarrio refused to lie, they requested 33 years in prison, and the judge gave him 22 years. So Tarrio yesterday, I got a letter from his mother, actually, was requesting a pardon from President Trump. And they're deciding the same thing we just detailed. Tarrio is sitting in solitary confinement. He's been in solitary for years by himself for 23 hours a day. I remember seeing a picture of him I believe it was being brought into the courtroom. And sadly, he looked very pale. He didn't look like his normal color. He hasn't been out in the sun for quite some time. He detailed to me once too. So there's a lot of elements of abuse there, but his lawyer wants him to be released and is asking President Trump for a pardon. And I think rightfully so. He should be pardoned along with all the Oath Keepers, along with all the J6ers. I mean, there's very few people who I don't think should be pardoned at this point. And I think that we need to save them. We also need to consider possibly giving them settlements, because Tarrio wasn't only just being dragged through criminal court. There was also several lawsuits that were filed against the Proud Boys, and it's meant to drain them financially so they can't appeal their convictions. He was another one who was being sued over the KKK Act, I believe it was. And I don't know if that lawsuit's still ongoing. I know a lot of J6ers were also sued by left-leaning attorneys at this point. And they've just tried from every avenue to bankrupt these people. And Tarrio wasn't initially even asking for crowdsourcing for his legal fees. He was willing to pay his own legal fees to fight this off and wanted everyone else who couldn't afford a lawyer to gain access to that through crowdsourcing. And now he does need people's help through the appeal process. But I think President Trump will pardon him. I'm hopeful that President Trump will pardon him because it doesn't make any sense. He wasn't there that day. It doesn't make any sense why he'd be sentenced to 22 years.
No, it makes zero sense. I mean, the people say, "Oh, he wasn't there," but seditious conspiracy, you don't have to be there to get it. First of all, I mean, it's such an ambiguous wording of a piece of legislation to begin with, and 22 years compared. I mean, like rapists and murderers, especially under Biden, get pardoned and commuted, or not convicted, or like sentences of 6 to 9 years. The thing that I was just about to ask you, I was going to say the only people who do not deserve a pardon or a commutation, Ray Epps and the pipe bomber. Are you familiar? Are you following the pipe bomber story? Are you involved with that one at all?
Yeah, so I was talking to Darren Beatty about this yesterday, and I still can't believe we're still talking about the pipe bomb story because it's so crazy to me. Mike Benz did a great job at showing the image that they just recently released. It's some video that they magically stumbled
blurred
on.
out his eyes.
Yeah, so you can't even use biometrics. How absurd! But it's not absurd. It's expected at this point. I mean, they held on to it for nearly 4 years. So not surprised that they don't want us to figure out who he actually is, because now we could possibly screenshot it and run facial recognition on our own behalf. But again, it's not surprising. I mean, they don't really want to find this guy. They pretend like, oh yeah, we've got a $500,000 reward out there, but they don't care. Or else they would have actually found him. I mean, they found grandmas who were just walking by the Capitol on January 6th. They had no problem finding those people, but finding the pipe bomb is a real mystery.
It's the shoes are such, not a dead giveaway, but like, okay, you're dealing with a pair of shoes that are unique. You're dealing with pixelated video. Apparently someone said there was one frame where they didn't get the eyes properly, but that they were glasses. So they still, and as if it's not suspicious that this person would have the wherewithal to cover every part of their body showing flesh. And then 4 years later, they say we're newly releasing footage because we haven't been able to find this guy. Yeah. It is so, we'll see what happens under the new administration. Brianna, so and your show schedule is what for those who don't know and want to follow?
Yeah, thank you. So my show is every day, Monday through Thursday right now, and it is at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We stream on Rumble Live, and we also stream on X as well.
Okay, no CommuTube for you?
No, they don't really like me. We post some clips, but I got whacked the first week, so we're just not even trying.
I can tell. I mean, every discussion around the Vegas incident gets demonetized, and I occasionally get an email saying you've been discussing self-harm, and the New Orleans has been getting demonetized, and the pipe bomber it gets systematically demonetized. It has nothing to do with content and only to do with narrative. They don't want anyone on that platform that is not approved media covering the story, and I guess covering it with the narrative that they want. Brianna, I know you have a limited time. So you're on Twitter, which the link is in there. Brianna Morello, Breanna Morello. Where else? So Rumble?
Rumble, the Brianna Morello Show. Yeah, just look up the Brianna Morello Show. Make sure it's the verified account. There's a couple of fake ones that we have to get knocked out, but it's the verified account. And that's where we go live every single day, Monday through Thursday. So that's where you can find the show.
Okay, amazing. And no locals community.
I did just sign up for locals. I did. Okay. So we just started locals.
BriannaMorelloShow.locals.com or BriannaMorello.locals?
I think it's BriannaMorello.locals. Okay. I think.
Well, you'll send me the link afterwards and I'll put it up in the pinned comments.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Brianna, I'm glad we met because this is fantastic. Everybody, you should be following Brianna because I'm going to start emailing FBI agents. Like I'm always nervous about doing it, but geez, it's like if some of them answer and I'll make some friends on the inside. I'm a nice guy despite the tweets.
Some of them respond. Yeah.
Maybe, hey, if they're responding, maybe they want to respond with disinformation to lead me astray. But let's keep all the eyes on the ball because they are sowing chaos. There's no question about it. There's no question that they are this incompetent to let these things happen or to say them, make the mistakes that they've made to mislead the public. I should say it's not a terrorist incident. And so everybody just go back out with your daily lives. If they knew it was, and there might be other risks, criminal negligence.
Yeah, no surprise. Those are our finest.
Yeah, that's the finest. 4chan does it better every day of the week. Brianna, thank you for coming on, and it's great to meet you. We will keep in touch.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon. All right, people, we're staying on, by the way, and we're going to go over to the Rumble sphere. I'm using StreamYard today, so I don't want to make a mistake. That's amazing. It's amazing. Like, I was thinking out loud, like being a journalist just means asking even the wrong questions, but asking questions and knowing where to get information. Okay, I'll cover this one here because I also want to make another clarification of a mistake of fact that I made during yesterday's show. I actually shot a short video about it, but it didn't tell the story properly. It just like, okay, you need to ask some questions and also know what resources are out there to allow you to find information. Yesterday, the news of the day was Justin Trudeau resigning. Although there's a semantics debate on the internet as to whether or not he resigned, announced his intention to resign, how much faster he could have resigned. He could have technically, I guess, jumped ship and moved to Mexico, and then the Liberal caucus would have convened to appoint an interim leader. Then they would have had a leadership race within, as it's doing it now. He's indicated that he will resign after they've had their leadership race and found a new leader. That was the news of the day yesterday. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be on Alex Jones at 2:30 today. I have to remember that. I'm going to talk about that. So as I'm covering the story, one of my friends, also a mole of mine from up inside Canada, sends me a link and says, one of the lead alternative potential candidates for the leadership, Mark Carney, has announced that he's running for the leadership. And then there was a landing page for Mark Carney for Canada. I'll show you that in a second. By all accounts, and everybody knows, Chrystia Freeland is going to be probably the front runner to replace Trudeau for the leadership. Mark Carney is another one who's a good globalist that everyone loves. He's a WEF on their website, at least. Whether or not he approves of the page, I don't know. Looks like he probably does. And as far as I'm concerned, Trudeau announces his resignation. Technically, he's still the leader of a prorogued parliament until March, until they can, have their robust national leadership race, and then he'll quit. Then he'll be out when he gets replaced. Someone also sent me something very interesting, is that Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, back in whatever the 70s or the 60s, when he was the leader of the Liberal Party, announced his intention to resign as the leader of the Liberal Party. They weren't the minority government. But then the Jeff Clark government failed, or not the Jeff Clark, that's Jeff Clark. The Clark government failed. And then Trudeau's dad rescinded his statement of intention to resign as the leader, stayed on as the leader, and then won a majority government for the Liberals. Many, many material differences there, but it is the rhyming of history is a little bit eerie. So by all accounts, Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney, two globalist shills, WEF patsies, young global leaders are going to vie for the leadership. And when I say they'll replace Trudeau with whomever, they might actually be worse. I don't think it's going to have an impact on the upcoming inevitable 2025 federal election. Conservatives are going to clean house. It's just a question by how much. All right. All that to say, as I'm reporting this, and the friend sends me a link, and I open it up, and I say, okay, look here. Heads up. Oh, so the tweet, I had to include my tweet. This was my tweet. Is Carney's running for leadership of the Liberal, and I include the link to the carneyforcanada.ca. All right. Well, it turns out that you call that parody, that it's not a legitimate website that's legitimately fraudulently deceitful. But during the stream, as I'm covering it after that tweet, I was like, oh, just for fun, I want to go. This is what it looks like. Landing page. Enter your first name, your last name, and your email address. Be part of our Canada's future. Subscribe today. Okay, that's what you get. Then I said, just for fun, I'm going to go to privacy and legal and see what the legal says. And you go to the legal, and at the end of the legal, it says it's a satirical website. It's not satirical, but it doesn't matter. So clarify that. And this is looping it back to being a journalist. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. Who owns that domain? In Canada, it's you know it or you don't. You can you have to register domains in your name if you own a domain. CIRA, the Canadian Internet Registry Authority, Canadian Internet Registration Authority, CIRA. So I don't think this is a story that's going to blow the world open. I think it's deceitful. I question whether or not there's a malicious intent to procure email addresses from people who might be interested in supporting Mark Carney. Because, by the way, I did end up going to it and submitting my spam email address. You put first name, last name, email address, and you click be a part. And after you've submitted your email address, then it tells you it's a satirical website, but in very small print underneath, after they've gotten your information. So I did think that there is a potential nefarious purpose for setting this up to get email addresses of people who are interested in supporting Mark Carney and then doing Lord knows what with those email addresses. Whether or not you want to have targeted campaigns, it's useful intelligence for an opposing political party. I don't know who's behind it, because when you go to Sierra to check out who owns that website, the information is redacted for privacy purposes, which is the exact opposite of the purpose of Sierra in the first place. The Canadian Internet Registration Authority was intended to let you know who owns which domain names in Canada. But all that to say is I'm sitting here on my little butt on the internet. It's like, oh, journalist just means asking the questions. Who owns the website? What would they possibly be doing with that website? Oh, and then going to the resources that exist. And then sometimes you don't know the resources exist. And that's, I guess, what separates the Breanna Morellos of the world from the John J. Harwoods of the world. People, this is the segue. We're going into YouTube right now. Let me give everybody the link. John J. Harwood. Who's the Fawns? Pieces of shit. They are pieces of shit. Human, walking, breathing pieces of shit. My apologies for swearing. I know some people are sensitive to that, and I should do better, but I've lost it with a couple of people today. What I wanted to do before we headed it on over, was we got Target Driver 1 says, Viva, all of U.S. military have our DNA on file. Do we know the truck bomber has been unambiguously identified? They lead you to believe in the press conference that he has been unambiguously identified. They said, we've got tattoos on flesh, which is, take that for what it's worth if the incendiary devices burnt that car to smithereens. We've got dental records from his dentist, and they've got the DNA, and ambiguously enough, they say the DNA does not match his child, to lead you to believe that maybe he found out the kid wasn't his and he flipped out. Or maybe the body is not the father of the kid, and he was the father of the kid, and there's a question to be asking. I'm really going to start emailing people internally. But nobody wants, like, hey, you got a Proton email? You got Signal? It's like, no, dude, they're watching and reading everything. So don't tell me anything that you don't want them knowing, because they know. So bottom line, we do not know if he was unambiguously identified, though they would like us to lead us to believe that. King of Biltong says, we plan on constructing our own manufacturing facilities this year. Support us and your health by grabbing some biltong from biltongusa.com. Use the quartering. How dare you? You can use the quartering 10, you can use Sticks 10, or you can use Viva 10 for 10% off. But it doesn't matter. Go support Biltong. I don't care how you do it or through what. I don't get a commission or anything. Biltong graciously sends me the biltong, and it's freaking delicious. I don't get anything from it, but support a company that is doing good and making great food, great products, healthy and amazing. We stream every day, 4 p.m., 3 p.m. Central, shit talking whilst cooking real food. We cook interesting things and talk up a storm. Follow our channel, Eat at Anton's. But do support the company. It's important. Vote with your dollar, and be healthy. How can they do the DNA test so fast? Is that new? So I looked that up as well. That was another question that I had. It's like, I see being a journalist and being a lawyer is not much different. And I don't think I'm a journalist anyhow, but I'm an analyst, an anal analyst. Anal as in I'm meticulous and obsessive compulsive. You can get very fast 28 to 48 hour results if you pay a premium. So it's feasible depending on the type of DNA test that you're getting. Typically the delays are 4 to 6 weeks, but that's because of backlog, not because of science, from what I understand. Okay, what else? Wish Biltong didn't use sugar. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of sugar. I mean, it's, again, also not a sponsor, but this entire can has 20 calories of sugar, and this is as sweet as you need anything to be. Okay, what else do we got here? Tesla model home car robot service. Just need a 15-minute city. Any ideas? Okay, I don't know what that is. DNA test is easy to test. Just usually there are thousands of tests to be done. They just push that test to the front of the line. Yeah, I have no doubt about that. There's certainly not, if they're going to make a mistake, it's not going to be one that is so easily verifiable. All right. So what we're doing is we're going to end this on YouTube. The entire stream or the portion that was not on YouTube will be put on YouTube later. I'm not doing it to circumvent any rules on YouTube. In fact, now that I say this out loud, I do want to see if this is still monetized on YouTube because of the serious nature of the discussion. Monetization. Oh, it's not monetized because I forgot to freaking turn on my, oh, what a stupid moron I am. Okay, there you go. We'll see if this stays monetized. That's very irritating. I hate that. I've just worked for YouTube. Okay, here we go. Bam, bada bing, bada boom. So we're going to end it on YouTube. Come on over to Rumble. The link is there if you want to come over to Locals. Because today, because I'm using StreamYard, It will not be only supporter-only mode. So come on over to Locals if you'd like to bypass the Rumbles and come be a part of our wonderful above-average community. Brianna, Morello, thank you very much for coming on, and now we are ending on CommieTube.